Alrighty, Travis Wayne Goodsell. I came up with an idea for another video about healthcare and the great fear of free healthcare. We're all gonna die! Oh, wait, they're gonna take care of us with free healthcare. Yay, we're all gonna live! Oh, the Democrats or the Republicans rule. Oh, they're taking it all away. Oh no, we're all gonna die. Yay, drama, drama, drama. So yeah, that's what I heard today. McConnell is going to cut all of the government health care. And he's going to push it through, just like he did Kavanaugh. Yeah, we knew this was coming. They threatened it last year. That's what Trump does. He threatens a whole bunch of things so that he can see what he can get away with, and then he brings them back at a later time. His typical pattern of behavior to eliminate all our rights and freedoms and liberties and put us in slavery and blah, blah, blah. And so, yes, why am I a fan of free health care? You liberal commie Nazi! No. I've been to Canada. I went to school there. That's how I know about Canada. I had a wife at one time. She was from Canada. She took me to Canada. The education was cheaper. And the quality of education was far superior than those here in the United States. Even your prestigious Harvard, Yale, blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, although I did have a biblical Hebrew teacher who studied under Thomas O. Lambdom of Harvard. So, at one time, the American schools were prestigious. We have to concede that. But the best and the brightest students went elsewhere in the world to teach the rising generation of youth in the world. And so, yeah, been to Canada, had a wife, we had kids. I was at school in Idaho, and we were going to have a baby. So she said, hey, Canada, free healthcare, free babies, they pay you to have children, and they pay you for being poor. Wow. Okay, whatever. And so there we go. We went up to Canada. So I'm sure that the Canadian healthcare system is the worst in the world, and Canadians are dying all over the place. No, they actually have a higher rate of life than here in the United States. In fact, most healthcares in Europe are producing lifespans greater than here in the United States. That should warn us. So, yeah, what is free healthcare? How does it work? There are plenty of videos on the subject that discuss it, but I will tell you from first-hand experience as one who got to participate in it by virtue of being married to a Canadian while I was going to school up in Canada. So, yes, cheaper education and a higher quality of education. We lived in McGrath, Alberta, and so McGrath had I can't really call it local hospital because all the other surrounding towns also went to the McGrath Hospital. Alberta is set up so that you have pocket towns. You have a town here, and then a road connecting between the two of them. And it is a consequence of the Brigham Young sending up the Mormons up into Alberta. The people from Lethbridge, Alberta, who were in Little Colony and were trying to grow and develop in Alberta. When the Mormons came, they wanted nothing to do with the Mormons, and so Lethbridge created a law that Mormons could not reside near Lethbridge for a certain number of miles. And as a result, you get Lethbridge and then pocket towns all around. So that explains why Alberta is designed the way it is. And so McGrath had a hospital, and it was a full-size hospital, fairly big, several floors, a huge lot. I worked there as a groundskeeper to earn some money to take care of the family while I waited to find out if I could go to the university, and was also a volunteer firefighter. That's their firefighting force up in Canada. It's all volunteer. There's no full-time paid firefighting force, but you do get death pay for volunteering. That's what the city council in McGrath called it, or well, that's what we nicknamed it. I'm sure they had a more governmental wording for what it was, but it was death pay. But everybody knew that that's how people survived, was from volunteering for fires. And there was actually quite a lot while I was there for that short period of time. We had our structural fires, we had car accidents, there was the majority of them are grass fires because there's lots of farming that's done up there. So with pocket communities, you know, the space in between, farmland, and canola fields are the big crop up in Canada. From McGrath to Lethbridge, canola fields, both sides of the road, and so yeah, there's the Hutterites. They're a religious community that live up in Canada. There's Hutterites, Mennonites, so I don't think there's any others. I mean, you've got your other religions, yes, but the Hutterites, great place to buy eggs from. You get fresh eggs, and they're not in some little factory where they're all tortured. They're, you know, on the range, and so they get well fed and well taken care of, and yeah, you can buy eggs from them and watch them as they eat in under a minute. Quite interesting. Takes me quite a while. I can almost consider myself an Italian, but I don't eat long enough to consider myself Italian. But the Hutterites, they're quick. They eat, get it over with, go right back to work. And they get the, I don't think it's John Deere. I think it's a different brand of harvester. But these particular harvesters, the engine would heat up pretty high, and it would heat up the metal plating around it, and as a result, then you're harvesting whichever crop you're harvesting, the crop shreddings end up on the metal, and when it gets hot enough, boom, catches on fire, get a trail of flames right behind it. And so we were often called out to the Hutterite farms to put out the fire, and they eventually learned that because of so many fires and having to pay for it, because yes, there is an economy in Canada. They don't have my proposed economic structure. People have to pay if they have to call the fire, police, well, the Mounties, and the EMTs. So, yes, that's how they pay for things in Canada. But I was on the news in Canada for the native Alberta Indians. They have their own territory up in Canada, and they farm the land. And well, I don't think they farm the land. I think it's just native land. But they had a massive fire out there, and Lethbridge alone was not able to handle it. And so the call went out to the surrounding fire departments. And so it was a 5-alarm fire. And when we got word that they needed help, we jumped right on it. McGrath Fire Department, we were the fastest in Canada. We responded as an average time of under a minute. And we've had to be chastised for speeding to get from our homes to the fire department. You know, no, drive the speed limit until you get to the fire department, then you can speed on the fire trucks. And so, yeah, I have experiences of us cutting off elderly ladies trying to keep on driving rather than pulling off to the side of the road while we have our alarms going, rushing to a fire. And she even called the cops on us. The fire truck cut me off. Did they have their lights on? Yes. Well, you're lucky I'm not going to give you a ticket. Pull over next time. So, yeah, and yes, we even had a casualty in one house fire. We were informed that there might be people inside, and it turned out that there were no people inside, but a person who knew the family went inside to search to see if there was anybody inside, and he ended up dying. And so when we put out the fire and we're doing the investigation, we found him. He was just right there near the door. He just almost made it and didn't. Very tragic. And so, yeah, Canada is normal. You know, to have a so-called socialist economy still incorporates a lot of capitalist economics in it, at least in Alberta. For babies, yes, they were free. We were able to qualify because we didn't have the income required to pay, and so the government subsidizes us for having children, and then we get monthly checks for having kids, so that it's intended to pay for helping the children. And it's not an insurance thing. It's not. Excuse me. It's not. What's that? CHIP. I think it's CHIP. Where the government gives the parents a check to buy food for the children, and you have to buy WIC. That's it. Not CHIP. WIC. So when you go into the grocery store and you go buy a milk, you'll see a little WIC sticker by certain milks, and that indicates that WIC has approved the purchase of this milk with the money they give for people with children. And so Canada just does a monthly thing that way. and it's automatic if you can't afford it. You don't have to file out all the forms with CHIP and stuff, or WIC. And so healthcare, I didn't really need to fill out any medical forms. I just went to the hospital and they took care of me because of who I was married to, being a Canadian. She was a Canadian, and it was free. When I was working as a landscaper, I was using jackhammer, and after long periods of time using the jackhammer, my nails turned all white, and it took a while to get color back into them. So we went to the doctor, Dr. Dahl, and they're well taken care of as doctors, just like here in the States. He had the big house in McGrath, and the mansion basically, and did landscaping for his house too, also. Yeah, he, well educated, knew his stuff. Said, "Oh yeah, wear some gloves to help shield it. Drink more water to help get blood flowing through your fingers. It's a type of Raynaud's syndrome that the tips of your extremities are smaller in the arteries or veins or whatever, and so yeah, drinking water will help expand them and provide more blood flow." So yeah, he knows his stuff, and you know, it's all free. He knows how to fix people, the natural way. He didn't say, "Oh, well, take these pills that I'm being subsidized by the pharma company to promote this particular pill, and I don't know if it's going to work or not, but it'll probably cause side effects that will lead to other side effects that you'll need to take more pills for, and so we'll get you all set up with a whole lot of pills." No, they don't do that in Canada. If you go in, because there were people who went in because they were drinking Drano or other horrible things, and they talk about it to me, about the horror stories that happen of women who are pregnant. They get the cravings for poison, and it's like, huh? What's wrong with women wanting poison? But yeah, and so they get poison calls from people who are doing that, or they were thinking that they could get a high or buzz from other harmful substances. So yeah, you do get those, and so I can understand part of the Republican fear tactic of, oh, people are gonna go in for all sorts of things, and yeah, they will. People are gonna be dumb, but they take care of you, and they tell you, hey, you need to exercise. That's why you're having these problems. Hey, drink more water. Drink fruits and vegetables. Cut back on the carrots. That's why you're jaundicing. It's nice, and it was nice to have a doctor who could identify the cause, not just treat symptoms. It would be really nice if the medical doctors would go back to that, because that's all they do now. They treat symptoms because pharma companies send them products and pay them for selling their product to people. And we need to stop that here in the States. And Canada is great for actually doing no harm to the patient when you have a doctor who only treats the symptoms and not the cause, that does harm to the patient. And so we've got major medical malpractice suits lined up if we would just recognize what's going on. Another interesting feature of Canada's economic system was that you'd have a flour company. You know, they'd harvest the wheat, they'd have the mill to grind it into powder, and then different flour companies would come to that farm and buy the flour from them, and they'd bring their own bags with the labels on them for the different companies, fill up the flour, the same exact flour, and then sell it as their product. And yeah, so in Canada, if you're aware of this, you always buy the no-name brand because it's the exact same flour, and you're just paying cheaper for the exact same flour. So why pay more for the same exact product? And so it's not like here in the States where the cheap product is the one that is poorer quality and not as good for you. And so there's more honesty in the Canadian economic system. So not only do they take care of you, they're honest with you. They don't try to scam you to buy things that are going to be worthless or cause harm. And that's another problem that we have here in the States. And yes, our quality of life is lower because of that. Denzel Washington had a movie called John Q. His boy at a baseball game collapses on the field. They take him to the doctor. The doctor says, "Well, I'm sorry, but your insurance company isn't valid. You'll need to pay for I think it's heart transplant," because Denzel Washington forces the doctor to take his life and put his heart into his son's in order to keep him alive. And so he holds everybody hostage in order to get that done, because the doctor isn't doing his job. He's causing harm to the patient by saying, "I'm sorry, well, insurance doesn't cover it, so you're out of luck. You know, hey, your son had a good life, and though it's short, why don't you just try to make his life as comfortable as possible until he dies? You know, come on. You have the technology. You can rebuild him." Dun, dun, $6 Million Man. I should do that theme song here, but oh well. We have the capability of curing people, but we don't because it's not profitable. Did you hear that? It's not profitable to cure people. Because what happens if people are all cured? They don't go back to the hospital. So listen again to my video on ransom economy. Ransom economy. It's not too far down from this video. Yeah, we are held ransom in this nation. We have to pay up in order to get health care. And that's a crime. Literally. But our government refuses to call it a crime, and therefore it's not a crime if the ones in charge say it's not a crime. There's another news comedian. She had a YouTube channel, and then she stopped it. And I saw her a couple of times on TYT. She was doing a couple of episodes, but she's great on that. She has a video where she uses the slogan, "It's not a crime if we do it." So I can't remember her name and the particular channel, but probably if you typed in the search in YouTube, "It's not a crime if we do it," you might be able to find her. And so maybe I'll look and I'll post it if I can find it and if I can remember. So yeah, that's the Canadian healthcare versus our healthcare. So when you hear Republicans talk about the demonization of socialism and free healthcare and how they want to do away with the government healthcare for the poor and the disabled and the elderly, just know that that's the Republican agenda. They are conservative. I just did last 2 videos. Well, may have been a video in between, but I've talked specifically about the Republican agenda using Mormons because that's what draws my viewership up, is talking trash about the Mormon church. But I have been born and raised in the church, so I know exactly what I'm talking about. So it's not really trash, it's talking truth to power, is the common phrase that Republican or Democrats like to use, because it came from Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth. I think I found the origin for. I'm not really sure how to take truth to power. It seems a little weird of a phrasing, but yeah, I know what I'm talking about. I'm not lying to you. This is all based on my experience. And yes, ransom economy involves insurance companies that screw us over. We pay them money for a return of that money when we need it, but then when we need it, they come up with all sorts of excuses and justifications to say, no. You know, my grandpa was victimized by insurance companies, by both the government insurance company and his life insurance company. He thought grandmother was covered when she died, and then they tell him, oh, whoops, sorry, no, you got the wrong policy, and we didn't bother to tell you. So, sorry, no millions of dollars for your dead wife. And so, yeah, he had to sell his mansion because he was a dentist, thus rich, and sell his mansion at a lower than market value, and had the bill of the funeral expenses, and so yeah, they're now buried up at Mount Olivet across from the University of Utah. So yeah, he was Southern Californian dentist. But yeah, our economy is the worst in the world. And people have told me growing up, it's the best we can do and it's better than anybody else. And I just look at them now and go, no, we can do better. It's not the best in the world. And in fact, I redesigned a whole economy to solve our economic crisis. But who am I? You know, I was just educated at one of the best schools in the world, a top 5 school in the world, mind you. That's how good they are with the cheaper payment for education. I still had to pay the student loan back, but yeah, and great education at a far lower price and a top 5 school back in that day. So, I mean, you guys can talk the rhetoric of, Travis, you're a hater, you're some kind of commie, and you're promoting socialism. You haven't seen my discussions of my economic system. You get to own property in my system. And socialist economics, technically, you don't own any property. It's all state property, and you get to use it. And so Canada really isn't socialist. They're a new kind of mix hybrid of capitalism and socialism. Yeah, I mean, pure capitalism, we don't practice it either. We practice ransom economics, as I said in the video. So what more is there to say? You know, are you going to continue to listen to the fear rhetoric of the Republicans, who now control the government and will just take it away from us? Because that's what they're going to do. They're just going to plow right through all of our rights, all of our freedoms, all of our liberties, all of our health care. We will be left with nothing but slavery to the system. That's what they want. That's their agenda. You can't argue me on that, because they've said it. Security over rights. We've got to protect the people, and that means destroying rights in order to do that. That's their agenda. That's what they do. You know, that's what they got away with 9/11 and the Patriot Act. We must protect the people by taking away the constitutional rights of the people. The Constitution is to blame for our threat. They are the threat. The Republican Party are the threat to this nation, and now they are in full control of all three branches of government. That is the definition of a constitutional crisis. Party government doing the will of the party rather than the will of the people. Wake up, people. Learn your definitions. Learn what is going on. You know, it's going to happen to you. They're going to take away health care. You're going to have to pay for their choices of health care that they give tax refunds to. And we will have to pay up the nose for no guarantee of receiving adequate health care. Because we don't get it now. And we didn't get it before Obamacare. You know, we shouldn't be forced to get health care. I'm still in a healthy age. I don't need to go to the doctor. I haven't gone to the doctor. I went when I had a kidney infection because the state of Utah forced me on medication, drugs, that had the side effect of weakening the kidneys. They were trying to kill me. Literally. Not hyperbole. They tried to kill me. And if you've seen my other videos, you know I was arrested because I wanted my kids back, and they don't like protesters, so they had me arrested, as the Republican Party does with protesters. Protesters are criminals. They don't deserve the right to petition for a redress of grievances, and when they deny us that, we have to protest, and they don't like protesters, so we are then the criminals and must be arrested as terrorists. That's what I was. I was arrested as a terrorist because I protested about not being allowed to redress grievances about my kids who were taken away from me by their mother who went to Canada. That's what the Republicans do. They will do it to you. I can't get a lawyer in Utah because all the lawyers are conservative. You'd think that they would love Utah because it's a mecca for criminal behavior. And they would be racking up the dough with all of the clients who are victims of the Utah government. But no, they don't challenge the Utah government because they're afraid of them. Because the Utah government makes the laws that prevents us from having our rights, having our liberties, protecting us as they claim they are doing, which all they're doing is putting more and more police on the streets to write us up and have us pay for going over the speed limit a couple of miles, or not coming to a complete and full stop at a stop sign. I'm surprised they don't do jaywalking here. I would expect jaywalking to be a top priority in order to meet quotas, which they say they don't do quotas, but then police officers get punished if they don't meet their quota. And so, yeah, that's what happens when you have a corrupt economy, and now we have a government of corruption running the economy. We're doomed. We should all be afraid. We should all be cowering in fear, because the only way to stop them now is to have another civil war. And they will not want that. We will be the terrorists. We will be the ones who they will sic the police, the National Guard, the Army on. They will stop us from the horrible, treasonous traitors that we are, wanting our freedom, wanting rights, wanting to have equality, so that when we work, we can take care of ourselves and a whole family. That's the government and the economy we live in. And it's just going to get worse now that the Republicans have the Supreme Court in their pocket. We are all doomed. And so just like in the Revolutionary War, when our founding fathers signed the Declaration of Independence, they were terrorists to King George. They were traitors, treasonous, conspirators, and thus King George declared war on the colonies, and we had the Revolutionary War to fight for our freedom and our independence. And then after we accomplished that, we had the the Constitution with the preamble. So if you don't understand what our whole nation was intended, even though we've never followed the Constitution, after George Washington left office, Thomas Jefferson established the first political party, destroying our government from there on out. It was on a downhill slide to destruction because of what Thomas Jefferson did. So, yeah, and I've talked about the Constitution in other places. Nobody's watching those videos. But, so, there you have it. That's Canadian socialism and the free healthcare that they offer. And I don't understand why Americans are being fear-mongered into thinking that free healthcare is a horrible idea. It can work. And I have a different economic system than what Democrats and socialist Democrats want. But nobody listens to me, as is evident by the number of views that I get on YouTube. So, yeah, that's that for that. I don't know what I'm going to call this. Maybe the demonic free healthcare. Maybe that'll catch your attention. So we'll see.